Thank you to everybody for attending this hybrid meeting for Planning Committee, Tuesday the 6th of October 2020. For those of you who don't know, I'm Councillor June Molyneux, Chair of the Committee, Councillor Chris Francis, Vice Chair. Also present are officers and councillors who will be asked to introduce themselves in a moment. Please note this is a hybrid meeting, with some members here in the Lancastrian, some members joining remotely from home via Teams. We have registered speakers joining remotely and from Committee Room 1. A recording of the meeting will be available online following the meeting. If you have joined the call or attending in Committee Room 1 because you're a member of the public who's registered to speak, please note that you'll have a time limit of up to 3 minutes. If you are calling on a phone, you need to press *6 to unmute your device when invited to speak. The legal officer will operate a stopwatch and will confirm when your time runs out. You should then finish, or if in the middle of making a point, wind up and finish speaking. Otherwise, your microphone will be muted. For ease, a pack has been prepared which contains reports, plans, presentation slides and any addendum for each item to ensure everyone can easily follow the agenda. This is available online. After officers have presented the report and any speakers have made representations, I'll invite members to make any comments. When speaking, members, please reference the paragraph and page number to enable everyone to follow you. I'll repeat the motion before the vote is taken to ensure everyone is aware of what is being voted upon and call upon each member to alphabetically to vote. If the technology fails, then I'll adjourn the meeting for a few minutes and we'll try to resolve any issues. If this isn't possible, a new date and time will be organised. Please can I ask all members to confirm they can hear and speak before the meeting begins. I'll call out each member alphabetically. I don't need to call out me, you can hear me. Councillor France?
Here, Chair.
Christopher?
Also here.
I can do both of you. This is what happens when we have two Councillors Francis. Councillor Beaver?
Here, Madam Chair.
Councillor Boardman?
Here, Madam Chair.
Councillor Dalton?
Here, Madam Chair.
Councillor Gordon is here. Councillor G? Councillor G?
Here, Chair.
Councillor Gray?
Here, Chair.
Councillor Hargreaves?
Here, Madam Chair.
Councillor Hilton?
Present, Madam Chair.
Councillor Morwood?
Here, Chair.
Councillor Whittam?
Here, Madam Chair.
And Councillor Whitaker?
Here, Chair.
Also, our officers, Adele Hayes?
Here, Chair.
Ian Crossland?
Here, Chair.
Alex Jackson?
Here, Chair.
Nina Nessa?
Here, Chair.
Okay. Apologies, there have not been any received. Item 1, minutes of the meeting, Tuesday the 8th of September 2020, pages 3 to 6. Will somebody propose those minutes, please? Thanks,
Proposed,
Councillor France. Chris France, seconded.
Seconded.
Somebody. The other Councillor France. All those in favour? I'm assuming that nobody said they are against, so everybody's in favour. Thank you. So the minutes have been approved. Have I any declarations of any interest? Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters on the agenda. As it's a hybrid meeting, if a member has an interest, they are requested to vacate the Lancastrian for the item or leave the call completely rather than just mute the microphone. The members can return to the Lancastrian or the call following the completion of the item. Have I any declarations? No? With that, moving swiftly on to the planning applications to be determined. We have 10 items to be determined tonight. For the benefit of the public here tonight, speaking arrangements are as follows. The officers will summarise the report. Registered speakers will be invited to speak in the following order: objector, supporter, parish or town councillor, ward councillor, applicant or agent. All registered speakers will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, apart from a ward councillor who may speak for up to 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers are against an application, as chair, I will grant the applicant or representative a time extension. I would respectfully ask members of the public who have not registered to speak to remain quiet throughout the proceedings and ask that your mobile phones are switched to silent. Item 3A, Amelie's Restaurant, Preston Road, Coppell, pages 7 to 42. Ian Crossland's going to present this item, which is the recommendation is approved subject to conditions. I have two registered speakers, the ward councillor Julia Berry and Michael Young, the agent. Councillor Berry and Michael, can you confirm you're able to speak and hear the proceedings?
Yes, this is Michael. I can hear you. Yes.
Councillor Berry, unmute yourself. Ian, can you please present the report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 7 dwellings with access, parking, landscaping and associated works following the demolition of the existing buildings on the site. Members will recall that this application was presented to the committee on the 8th of September, where a decision was deferred in order to allow members to undertake a site visit. Members visited the site on Friday, the 18th of September. The application site comprises the former Amelie's restaurant building and associated car park on the A49 in Coppell. The site is located within a tract of development extending south from Coppell and is in the green belt. The application site is previously developed land, and the framework and local plan allow for the redevelopment of such sites on the proviso that the development does not have a greater impact on openness. The proposed development would result in a comprehensive redevelopment of this previously developed site, which already contains built development. The site is also located within a line of development with development on 3 sides, and as such would infill what is a previously developed site and will be viewed in the context of that surrounding development. Furthermore, it's noted that there was previously a terrace of dwellings in the position of the proposed development and that the proposal seeks to replicate this. It's considered that the impact on the openness of the greenbelt will be no greater than that which already exists in relation to the built form on the site and in the context of development surrounding the site. On this basis, it's not considered that the proposed development will constitute inappropriate development. The application site is highly prominent from the A49 Preston Road, and the development has been designed to fit in with the scale and positioning of existing buildings along this highway and to create an active street frontage, whilst parking will be kept away from this prominent frontage to the rear. The dwellings will be of a contemporary design and will be faced in materials common to the locality, including features that reflect local design. As such, the development will result in a harmonious addition to the street scene that would have a positive impact on this dilapidated site. The proposed dwellings would meet with the council's interface guidelines and would result in no unacceptable impacts on residential amenity. The site would be accessed from Rivington Place, which already provides access to a cul-de-sac of dwellings. This highway would remain a cul-de-sac, whilst adequate parking will be provided in line with the council's parking standards. LCC Highways have assessed the scheme and raised no objection. It is therefore considered that the proposed development would not have a significant impact on highway safety, capacity or amenity in the immediate vicinity of the site. There are no ecological concerns in relation to the site, and the site is not in an area of flood risk. Overall, the proposed development is considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan and is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, are you asking me to speak, Chair? I didn't hear you. Sorry. Chair?
Councillor, it's my fault. I've muted myself this time. Yes.
Okay.
Carry on.
So I'd proceed. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I'm briefly here this evening to speak against this planning application. And I'd like to encourage the Planning Committee to be mindful of the views of the local residents at Rivington, who are adversely going to be affected by this development. And it's up to the Planning Committee to decide whether there are planning reasons for refusal that meet the moral expectation of our residents. Residents here at Rivington Place have made these houses their family homes, and over a period of time they've put planning applications to make moderate and very appropriate improvements and additions to their family homes with respect for the openness of the countryside, obviously because they're on green belt land as well. And now to be met with a planning application that puts an exit where they were never ever viewed a cul-de-sac to be opened up, and this has been come about by the model of development which has forced far too many houses onto the existing site, and I view this as over-intensification of the green belt, and very unnecessary, as there is an existing exit directly on the A49 to accommodate an appropriate number of houses. So just to make a plea for the current application to be withdrawn or refused, because it doesn't really meet the requirements of what we aspire to, really, as far as greenbelt development in Coppell. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Have I got Michael, please? Michael Young.
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
Okay. Whenever you're ready, you can.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and members of the committee. Following the previous planning committee meeting regarding the application before you, I understand the members have undertaken a site visit to gain a better understanding of the proposal. Whilst the application was only briefly discussed at the last committee meeting, we noted that members' comments regarding the scale of the development in its greenbelt location, which has just been touched on again. When approached to design a proposal in the greenbelt, both the scale and density are two of the most, if not the most significant factors to consider. The application before you this evening is the outcome of numerous design iterations and detailed analysis of both the existing and historic conditions, which we believe has informed a considered design response. As a previously developed site in the Greenbelt, policy BNE5 informed the starting point for the application. As the application site originally comprised a row of terraced housing, which existed on the site for approximately 100 years prior to being demolished sometime between 1979 and 1986. The significance of the site's historic condition is important, as it provides a benchmark for what can be considered an appropriate scale of any future redevelopment in the Greenbelt. Without venturing into too much technical detail, when comparing the original buildings which stood on the site for over a century, the proposal before you amounts to a 7% reduction in overall volume. Of course, simply reinstating the historic condition in a modern development would not address the reality of modern living, and the application has taken into account issues such as car parking, amenity space, and environmental factors, which have all been incorporated within the design and fully supported by statutory consultees. As an architect, I believe the protection of our greenbelt is essential. Nevertheless, this must be balanced against the need for affordable homes for young families, and by identifying appropriate previously developed sites such as this one, the protection of the greenbelt can be maintained whilst contributing to the survival of more rural communities. On this basis, we hope the members feel to agree with the recommendation put before this evening. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'll invite members for their comments. Can you use your raise hand function on the on Teams, please, if you wish to speak? Any members who wish to speak? Oh, let's have a look. Councillor Hilton, Councillor Whitaker, Councillor Beaver. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. I went on the site visit, and my opinion since the previous planning meeting has not changed. It's actually just been cemented. Looking at this application, I'm currently looking at what's there at the moment, and from a purist perspective, there is one building and a large amount of outdoor space in terms of a car park. So I do believe that the openness of the greenbelt will indeed be affected. I don't believe that this is an example of redevelopment of the greenbelt. I believe it's an example of overdevelopment. I feel it's over-intensification, and I think the site as it is at the moment compared to what is proposed, it will have a detrimental effect on the openness of the greenbelt. Therefore, I would like to move for refusal.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whitaker, and I've got Councillor Diggy at the end. Councillor Beaver.
Thank you, Chair. I went on the site visit. I'm ward councillor for this area as well. The issue for me, just about as Councillor Hilton's talking about there, about the openness and the green belt, etc. But it's about the impact that it's going to have on the amenity of residents who live nearby. They talk about replacing a terrace that was there for 100 years ago. I'm sure it was, and I'm sure in those days there was no car parking there. What's now proposed is an attempt to squeeze no fewer than, I don't know, 7 or 8 car parking spaces, accessible not from the A49, but down a very narrow cul-de-sac called Rivington Place. And that is going to have a serious effect. It talks about, I think somebody said it's no impact on the residential amenity. I think it was the planning officer talked about that. I can tell you that this will have a very serious effect on the residential amenity of that area. It's too big a development to put on that site. It's too ambitious. They're trying to get too many houses on. And I think if we were to let this go through in the way that we are, that the officers were suggesting, we were doing no service to the people that live there. I second the proposal for a refusal. I'm very concerned about what this will have on the amenity of the people that live there. And if we remember at the last planning committee, the lady whose relative lives at the end terrace there made a very well-made points about the loss of amenity for those people. So it's too big, too many car parking spaces, accessible down a narrow lit road. The LCC talked about a swept path analysis of something, which they can't do because it's not big enough. And then they use the excuse, well, bin lorries go down there anyway, so another 7 houses with umpteen bins will not make any difference, which is absolute nonsense. So I support the recommendation for refusal, and I hope members will.
Thank you, Councillor Whitaker. Councillor Beaver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could I just ask, it says 7 properties, but are they detached or are they going to be terraced again?
Terrace.
Right, okay. I agree that it would be a little bit overdeveloping on that side, and I don't see why it can't be accessed from Preston Road. Because that's one of the main concerns coming around the back, is just going to cause a whole bunch more people. And then, of course, the bin vans, the bin lorries are going to come round there. I'm minded to refuse it, but I'll still keep an open mind, thank you so far.
Okay. Councillor G.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to go for the office recommendation. You're talking about houses in the Greenbelt, but they are on the main road. So when he's talking about lots of amenities, with the houses being on the main road, I can't see how it affects any of the houses down there, because as I said, it's on the main road. It's not visible from the houses on Rivington Place, and so I personally can't see a problem with that one. As for the access, I think it's a safer access to come out there than having cars coming out onto the main road. Someone just mentioned bin wagons. Bin wagons go down there anyway, so I can't see a problem there. So I would go for the officer's recommendation.
Okay. Anybody else wish to comment? Councillor Morwood.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just get the video working. Can I second the support for the proposal? As Councillor G has said, it's the frontage at the moment is a dilapidated site. It's hardly a good amenity at the moment. It will impose a nice improved street frontage, a return to its previous looks perhaps, where no one would have given any thought to a line of terraces along that front, and I'm sure they'll look very impressive, replacing what was there in the 70s and 80s. I know it's a reduction in the volume, and I was about to make the point that yes, in the good old days, of course, we didn't have gardens and cars, but this isn't the good old days. People expect and deserve some amenity in terms of gardens. I accept it's disappointing that perhaps they couldn't have come in from the front, but I think Councillor G is right that it is safer around the back. It is not a narrow track around the back. It's there's room for 2 cars to pass with ease, including past the bin lorry. We're simply extending perhaps the turning circle at the end, and I think, to be perfectly honest, based on what I saw, this will be an improvement in their amenity. It will be an improvement in their view from the houses. And at the moment, as I say, I'm happy to second the proposal.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gordon-Franz.
Thank you, Chair. It's just really a question for officers. It's just again, it's this refuse wagon backing down there. Do they think there will be sufficient storage for 21 bins, which is what 7 residences would potentially have on bin collection day? There would be 21 extra bins down there if everybody subscribed to garden waste.
Would you like me to answer that? Yeah,
yes, please.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, I mean the each property will be able to store their bins in their rear garden area. They've all got gardens, and they've all got access to the courtyard and the rear of the properties. There would be space to leave the bins out on bin day in the courtyard area or at the end of the cul-de-sac. I expect that is what would happen, but the rest of the time they would have to keep the bins within their own properties. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I've got Councillor Whitaker and then Councillor Chris France. Councillor Whitaker.
Just to make the comment about the reduction in volume that was referred to by, I think, the officers or the agent or whatever. I think the reduction in volume is on in terms of the building itself. I don't think when you take into account the area of the car park that's now going to be expanded, I think it's going to be a greater area in terms of square footage and floor area. I just cannot believe that people who went on the site visit could think that Rivington Place will be an adequate access. I certainly don't.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Whitaker. Councillor France.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy just to stay quiet on this. I think my comments have already been said.
Well, they absolutely haven't. You're last. You're right. You're okay. Okay. So if anybody else wishes to speak? Councillor France, you've got your hand up still. Is that a mistake? Okay. Councillor France, you've got your hand up as well still.
Oh.
Okay. I'll go through each member individually for this vote. So the officer recommendation is the application is approved subject to conditions. I've had a proposer and a seconder from that, and I've had a proposer and a seconder for refusal. I will take the amendment first. Refusal, I think, is it the openness of the green belt over intensification and the impact on residents? Is that it? Adele, you want to say something?
Yes, Chair. I'd just like to clarify the reasons for refusal, if I may.
Yeah.
I note that Councillor Hilton referred to the development having a greater impact on the openness of the green belt, contrary to what's set out in the office recommendation, and presumably on the basis that it's contrary to the framework and contrary to BNE 5. I'm not sure whether the actual traffic generation and the impact that would have on amenity was qualified as a reason for refusal. Proposal to approve. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay. So take the amendment first for refusal. I'll go through you all. Councillor Beaver, for, against, abstain.
Against.
Against.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. Councillor Boardman. You're muted.
Sorry, Chair. Are we voting for the officer's recommendation or for the refusal?
We're voting for the refusal at the moment.
Okay. I will not vote for the refusal, Madam Chair.
So you're against refusal?
I am against refusal.
Councillor Dalton. I'll translate for you. You're all right.
Against.
Councillor Gordon-Franz.
For.
Councillor G.
Against refusal.
Councillor Gray.
Against.
Councillor Hargreaves.
For.
Councillor Hilton.
For.
Councillor Morwood. Councillor Whittam.
Against.
Councillor Whitaker.
For.
Councillor Chris France.
Against.
And myself against. Alex?
Well, thank you, Chair. The motion is lost. 4 members voted to refuse and 9 members voted against refusal.
Okay. So, all those in favour of the officer recommendation? If anybody isn't, could they raise their hand, please, virtually? It would be easier. So I've got Councillor Hilton, Councillor Whitaker. Anybody else? All those, I assume, are in favour of the officer. Councillor Hargreaves, Councillor France. Everyone else is in favour of the officer recommendation. Thank you. Adele, you've still got your hand up. I'm confused. So, Alex?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members have voted to approve the application at Amelie's, subject to conditions in the report.
Okay, thank you. Item 3B, land adjoining Kieran Residential Park, Nell Lane, pages 43 to 86 with an update on your addendum, and the recommendations still remains the same for refusal. I've registered speakers. I've got an objector, Anne Selby, Parish Councillor Mark Brown, Ward Councillor Peter Gabbett, Council Champion Mark Clifford, and the agent Fran Lennon. Anne, Mark, Councillor Gabbett, Councillor Clifford, Fran, can you all hear me?
Yeah,
I can't, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I had a lot of
Yes,
voices
Chair.
then. Okay, thank you. Ian, could you present this report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the erection of 115 dwellings with associated parking, landscaping, drainage, pump station,
Put it down, I've got
roads and footways, and other associated works on land to the south of Nell Lane. The site has been allocated for housing development in the Chorley local plan, and there's already an extant planning permission in place for residential developments on the site. As such, the principle of residential development of this site has been established. The site comprises an area of open grassland to the south of Nell Lane, with mature trees to the periphery and a residential caravan park to the west. Vehicular access is sought from Nell Lane, with a pedestrian footpath and cycle link connecting with developments to the south. This is considered to be an acceptable arrangement by LCC Highways. In order to provide an acceptable access to the development site from Nell Lane, a comprehensive scheme of highway improvement works will be required. This would include widening the highway to 5.5 metres wherever possible, speed limit signage along Nell Lane, footway extensions and road markings to delineate pedestrian walking areas, installation of traffic calming features such as speed cushions and chicanes created through road markings and curbed build-outs with bollards, the minor alignments of the junction with Shady Lane, Nell Lane, and street lighting along the length of Nell Lane. There would also be approximately 60 metres of established and important hedgerow removed in the creation of the access to the site. The extent of the necessary highway works to Nell Lane and the associated loss of important hedgerow will be such that it would change the character of Nell Lane from a simple rural lane to that of an urbanised estate road. This would be harmful to the character of the lane and the locality to such an extent that it would result in an unacceptable impact. The design of the development itself is considered to be acceptable, and the proposed layout plan demonstrates that an efficient use of the allocation will be made with an appropriate level of off-street parking. The relationship between the proposed and existing dwellings is considered to be an acceptable one and in line with the Council's interface standards. The lead local flood authority have assessed the site in consideration of the applicant's flood risk assessment and have no objection to the proposed development, subject to the inclusion of an appropriate condition requiring the final details of a surface water drainage scheme and its implementation. No affordable housing or public open space provision will be supported through the development, and the applicant has advanced a viability case which seeks to demonstrate why such obligations cannot be supported in this instance. This has been considered by the Council's viability consultants, who do not accept the viability case. The development is therefore contrary to Policy 7 of the Central Lancashire Core Strategy and Policy HS4B of the Chorley Local Plan. Other matters are considered to be acceptable, and all issues are covered in detail within the committee report. On balance, it's considered that the benefits of the proposed residential development through the provision of new housing and the associated employment that it would create during the development do not outweigh the harm to the character of Nell Lane, from the necessary highway works and the harm through the non-provision of affordable housing or public open space provision. It's therefore recommended that the application be refused. Thank you, Chair.
I invite you to speak now, please. I'll let you start the timer. It's my fault. I'm wondered why you couldn't hear me, and I've muted myself. Anne, would you like to speak now, please?
Hello, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm Anne Selby. I'm a resident of Nell Lane. I'm also an ex-planner. I am also the Chief Executive of the Wildlife Trust for Lancashire Manchester Merseyside. And I want to object to this proposal really on its access principles because of its impact on biodiversity, amenity, and actually pragmatic drainage, as we've just been exhibited today. The access road for this estate, the feeder estate, is supposed to be further south on the A49. This is already established. So why is the developer owner not using it? Is this greed or a ransom strip? I don't know. But, you know, we should be protecting Nell Lane from widening. From an ecological point of view, this is an ancient row of oaks and hedges that lead up to the Curtin estate. The ecological study didn't seem to consider the fact that it's a lot of resident owls and bats. I know because I hear them every night. And I didn't see these in the ecological study at all. From an amenity point of view, it's been mentioned Curtin Valley Park is the green lung for this area. It was planned in the days of the Newtown Commission. Nell Lane is a really well-used amenity route for walkers, horse riders and cyclists. And since the Lancashire County Council have used it as a COVID-safe route, green route, with the road closures, that has really increased. Actually, there's a real sense of place about that route. And then today, the end of the road down by the A14 has been flooded, as it frequently does, and that is because Shady Lane hasn't got adequate drainage. It all runs down Nell Lane and floods at the bottom and can't get onto the A49 to the interceptor site. So we have big problems with that. From a policy point of view, ecological collapse is now seen as one of the top risks to the world, up there with climate change. And there's a lot of pressure to start making changes in our behaviour for this. We've got a new Environment Act that's coming through that's going to require local authorities to make nature recovery strategies and nature recovery networks. This lane is part of that joined up nature recovery. The Prime Minister has just committed to an international audience for 30-30 recovery, 30% of land protected for nature by 2030. And it seems extremely short-sighted to be losing the options for compliance for that, because this isn't just an inconvenient bit of biodiversity. It needs to be enhanced and protected. We need nature's recovery, not its destruction, and we can't afford to casually throw it away. People are reconnecting to nature during COVID, young people especially. I mean, we've seen Greta Thunberg, Extinction Rebellion. They're not prepared to let the status quo continue and these things go unchallenged. So for those reasons, I would say, please, can we find a different solution rather than trashing our wildlife, our lifelines, our sense of place? Thank you.
Have I got Mark Brown, please?
Thank you.
Okay.
Ready. Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
On behalf of the Durban Parish Council, Durban residents, I would like to object to the planning application for the development of land adjacent to Nell Lane. Durban Parish is a very small parish, and for that reason only has just two traditional country lanes. These two lanes, which in many ways set the character of the parish, will both be impacted by the proposed development. Shady Lane would, in our opinion, see an increase in traffic, concern given that in many places it is tight for vehicles to pass one another, especially close to the Nell Lane junction. However, it's the impact on Nell Lane that is the greatest cause for concern. Nell Lane is a very narrow lane enclosed by hedges and an arboreal canopy that gives it a rare character, a valuable addition to the local countryside for so many reasons. It provides a natural habitat for local wildlife, and perhaps more importantly, it provides a rural atmosphere for many local residents that use it for walking dogs, riding horses and cycling. Many of these residents reside in the caravan park on Nell Lane, and many of these residents are in their 60s and 70s and not always capable of going further afield to exercise. So for them, as it is for all of us, Nell Lane is a valuable asset. What Nell Lane doesn't lend itself to is access for construction traffic or as a route for hundreds of extra vehicles a day. Introducing this traffic to a narrow lane used by many pedestrians is clearly a recipe for disaster. Some may argue that the proposed road improvements may ease many of these concerns, which may or may not be true. What the improvements would do, without a doubt, is destroy the rare and valuable character of Nell Lane, and by association, the character of Cureton itself. I would also like to point out that Nell Lane is prone to flooding at the Wigan Road end. This would possibly force vehicles to use the Shady Lane for access, bearing in mind the Nell Lane Shady Lane junctions to be made smaller. Would this not increase the risk of accidents on this narrow stretch of Shady Lane? From what I can tell, the aforementioned road improvements are designed to improve access and do little to address the flooding issues. And on that subject of drainage, is it not the case that another planning application, which was recently withdrawn, would require approval to provide drainage and sewerage for this proposed development? And on the last point, with all these extra houses built in the area, we have seen very little improvement in local amenities and facilities. Perhaps that could also be taken into account. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gabbett, would you like to speak now, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I spoke about a similar application last year to this committee, in which it agreed Nell Lane could not be accessed for construction vehicles or access for a major development. Whilst the application is a new one, we find ourselves here yet again discussing access via Nell Lane from another arrogant developer who has not carried out any real consultation with the community. As ward councillor, it is my duty to object to this planning application because the access via Nell Lane is unsafe and unsuitable. It is a narrow country lane, and we've already documented the safety concerns at a previous planning meeting. The development's proposed access will have a significant and severe impact on the local highways and road safety. It has previously been noted that Nell Lane has substandard visibility, and it is unthinkable that Nell Lane Monaco want construction vehicles careering up and down throughout each day. We as a council are responsible for ensuring we take these concerns seriously, and I ask all members to reject this application in its entirety. The sightlines have been described as severely hindered due to the mature hedgerow, and the application wants to destroy 60 metres of it. The developer wants to destroy ancient and well-established hedgerow with a proposed road widening. Now, the proposal includes a widening which is almost double the average width of Nell Lane, which I believe further evidences the fact that it's unsuitable. Widening a rural country road will have a devastating impact on the natural landscape, and it is completely unnecessary. Access can clearly be utilised from Parkhurst Avenue without the need for any destruction of the environment. Now, I understand this may not be a possible alternative for this applicant, but that is not a concern for this council, but for the developer. The fire and rescue service are vital when reviewing a planning application, as they are the emergency responders and must be able to service a development. They recommend a minimum carriageway width between curbs of 3.7 metres. The proposed plan is to widen this road in the centre of Nell Lane. However, the junction with Wigan Road or Shady Lane's junction with Sheep Hill Brow, which is the other alternative route that cars will take, will still remain considerably less than 3.7 metres, meaning there is inadequate space for emergency vehicles to access this new development, even with the widening scheme in place. This presents a risk to safety if developed, and during construction, vehicles, including excavators, wagons, would significantly increase the risk to residents I serve, the general public, and the construction workers themselves. Now, the main point you can see running through my opposition is Nell Lane as access, and it's absolutely vital that it's not granted for access. I'm extremely disappointed in the developer, as they have not once attempted to contact me as the local ward councillor to address the issues I've raised previously. It comes across like they've tried to profit from the pandemic by submitting a planning application with little consultation with the community in the hope that it could fly under the radar. The application has been hastily written, and there's been no attempt to try and assuage local concerns. Instead, they provide a one-page document detailing a road widening proposal, claiming it to be a solution. But in my opinion, the sheer lack of quality indicates that they have no respect for my community, this committee, or our council. Cuerden is known for its corridors of hedgerows and trees, and in an ever-developing world, it is essential we keep these features to ensure the countryside feel to our rural areas. It would be an outrage to support any development that threatens this community asset. Finally, in your planning report, section 10, agenda page 26, the final paragraph details in full where I believe this application fails to comply with our local plan. There is a lack of services in the area. It does not protect or enhance the natural environment, but in fact harms it substantially. It will have a detrimental impact to central Lancashire's natural environment assets. It will have a severe impact on highways and will prejudice highway safety. And it'll have an enormous impact on historic hedgerows and local landscape. So I thank you for listening, and I urge you to support the recommendation from our planning officer and reject this application. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Gabbard. Councillor Clifford.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. Members of the committee, I urge you to refuse this planning application outright. As a councillor, I see many applications come and go, some good and some bad. But to be quite frank with you tonight, I personally believe this one is on a whole different level of badness. I hold the role of champion for environment and green space, and I'm a committed environmentalist. My role is to protect the environment for today and for future generations. Tonight's application, if passed, would destroy the beautiful environment of Nell Lane, which I find completely unacceptable. What does environment actually mean? The definition of environment is the surroundings or conditions in which a person, animal, or plant lives or operates. Nell Lane is a rural country lane of immense natural beauty. It is the quintessential English country lane. For anyone who has ever walked, cycled or driven down Nell Lane, it really is a most uplifting experience to behold its stunningly beautiful hedgerows, trees and roadside verges. It is the perfect environment for many animals and plants to absolutely thrive, and it's what's known as a wildlife corridor. It is home to so many species. The plans in front of us tonight, if allowed, would destroy this amazingly rich environment, the environment which we need for our health and well-being, the environment animals and plants thrive in, this beautiful environment we all hold dear to our hearts, and it's under threat of becoming just another urbanised road as part of a housing estate. For what, may I ask? There's already is a valid planning application that's been passed to build 115 homes on this land. However, that plan does not destroy Nell Lane, as the access is from Parkhurst Avenue. Nell Lane is the last surviving example of a rural country lane that we have in Clanley Woods and Cuerden. Everything else is sadly gone. I ask you tonight to preserve the beautiful natural amenity of Nell Lane, the importance of Nell Lane to all residents and to every plant and living creature who call it their home. I urge you to refuse this application outright. Thank you for listening to me.
To myself. Thank you, Councillor Clifford. Have I got Fran Lennon, please?
Hiya, yeah.
Hi, whenever you're ready to start, thank you.
Okay. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. This application seeks full planning permission for 115 dwellings on land off Nell Lane in Chorley. The application site forms part of a mixed-use allocation for employment residential uses. The site benefits from a full planning permission for residential development. The principle of housing on the site has therefore been established. Redrow Homes have previously applied for 87 dwellings on the site, proposing an access from Nell Lane. This application is in effect a resubmission of Redrow's scheme. While alternative house types are proposed, the overall principles of Redrow's application with regards to the scheme's layout, access and landscaping remain largely the same. Indeed, as part of Red Rose scheme, off-site highway improvements to Nell Lane were proposed and agreed with the local highway authority. Their application was recommended for approval to committee, although later withdrawn. These works are also proposed as part of the current scheme and are still acceptable to the local highway authority. The measures are designed to deter existing rat running and excess vehicle speeds whilst improving the route for pedestrians. Traffic calming measures are common features in and on the edge of many settlements in rural areas. It is our strong view that they do not have an urbanising effect on the character of the wider area and form no basis as a reason for refusal. Notwithstanding this, it's noted that the local highway authority have recently implemented a temporary road closure of Nell Lane and Shady Lane. As such, the lane is now currently closed to through traffic in any event. If this temporary closure were to be made permanent, it is considered that this would be a betterment to the previous situation. The traffic that would be generated from the development would be minimal in comparison to the rat running that existed previously. The reduction in vehicle movements along the lane would reduce the existing conflict between pedestrians and vehicles. Therefore, the currently proposed improvement works, which your officer has raised concern with in terms of their impact on the rural character of the lane, would not be necessary. This permanent closure could be controlled by condition, or alternatively, the application could be deferred to allow further consideration of the operation of the temporary closure and how a permanent solution could resolve the issue in its entirety. This would also allow further discussions to take place with officers on viability matters, which were only identified to the applicant after the committee report had been written. We therefore do not agree with your officer's recommendation of refusal and consider that the application should be approved, subject to conditions, or worst case, deferred to allow these matters to be resolved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got a new number of members who wish to speak. I've got Councillor France, Hilton, Councillor Morwood, Councillor G. Councillor Chris France.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to draw attention. I think, well, at first, let's start by commending the officers on what is a very well written report. And I think all three of the reasons for refusal are particularly strong. In particular, of course, the one regarding the rural character of Nell Lane, but also there's the issue regarding the low-level affordable housing and the fact that there won't be any contribution towards public open space. So really all three of them are pretty strong reasons for refusal. I note that the agent are suggesting perhaps a deferral to actually to discuss some of these conditions and also some of the viability around it. But to be honest, it'd have to be a very, very decent amount of discussions. And I, to be fair, this consultation expired on the 3rd of June, and the decision was due by the 28th of July and was delayed, of course, by coronavirus. But I think there's been plenty of time already, and I don't really think there's a need of turn this chamber into an echo chamber. I suggest we just move on, get this thing refused, and let's propose that.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to repeat what my colleagues have so well put about the character of Nell Lane and the environment and the nature. It's almost insulting that this has been proposed with the lack of affordable housing, and that alone is reasons for refusal. So I'm happy to second Councillor France. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
I muted myself.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to add to what the speakers have against this proposal have said very eloquently. So we've got low affordable housing, and then they want us to change a lane into well, a major road. There's no doubt in my mind that this would be harmful to the character of Nell Lane and the locality, without a doubt. I mean, why would we want? I mean, what is it to think about? Let's take a lane that's been there for centuries, double its width, put in nice white road markings, street lights, speed bumps, rip out a couple 60 metres high of hedging. Yeah, we're going to agree to that. Absolutely not. If there was no other option, if they could, if there was nowhere else to come in to do this development, we might even at least think about it. But there is another option, the A49, and so right now I just have I wish to support the officer's recommendation.
Okay,
for refusal.
Councillor G. No, okay. Thank you. Obviously, everybody said everything. Councillor Gordon-France, anything different to add?
Just absolutely amazed that this application's back here trying to use Nell Lane again.
Okay.
Absolutely stunned.
Okay. Councillor Hargreaves?
Well,
Anything
the same as Councillor France, obviously, but I'm disappointed that they've actually come back because there is another access point. We went to visit Nell Lane, quite a lot of us, from this planning committee went to visit it. We actually spent some time there with the officer. I'm really astounded that they've decided to reapply for access to Nell Lane, and I'm binded to refuse this application.
Thank you. Councillor Beaver? Anything else to add?
Yeah.
Anything different?
Well, just a little bit, Madam Chair. We accept the principle to build is there, but the developers won't listen to the residents, they're not listening to the council, and they're not listening to this committee. The fact that the road is temporarily closed is neither here nor there. It's just a subject for today. She mentioned about subject conditions that it can be built. Well, what about the condition about putting the access road somewhere else? There's the answer. If they came back with that, we wouldn't be able to turn this down. The one thing that when Ian was talking through the description, was he reminded me of Clayton Brook Road with all the chicanes and all urbanisation. I support the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whittam? You're muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry about that. This feels a bit like a deja vu moment. Here we were last year. We voted through 115 houses with access to Parkhurst Avenue, except this time they've come back to Nell Lane. I believe this is an audacious attempt to circumvent the democratic process of this planning committee, whose members represent the people who elected them. I noticed on the website there was in excess of 120 objections to this recycle proposal on the council planning portal, patently showing people's disgust to the plan. Half of the planning committee turned out for a site visit last year, able to see this beautiful tree-lined lane for themselves in its glory. I believe that there was no will to allow such an asset as Nell Lane to be urbanised then, as there shouldn't be now. Nell Lane has flooded 5 times in the last year, twice this weekend, the latest being today, as has been mentioned before. It's not suitable to become the sole access point for 115 home development. I fully support the officer's recommendation for refusal, and Parkhurst Avenue should be the access point if this development was to go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think everybody's spoken who wishes to. And what I propose to do, so the officer recommendation is for refusal on the grounds that outlined. Does anybody object to that? If not, I will take it that this is a unanimous vote because nobody's spoken in favour. The silence is deafening, so all members are in favour of the officer recommendation for refusal. Thank you. Moving to go on, Alex.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just confirm that members have decided to refuse the application for the reasons set out in paragraphs 1 to 3 of the officer report.
Okay. Item 3C has been withdrawn. So we go on to item 3D, Halsworth Manor, Long Lane, Heath, Charnock, pages 89 to 124, with an update on your addendum. The recommendation remains the same, which is that planning permission is refused. Adele's going to present this item, and I have a number of registered speakers. I've got an objector, Craig Winter, supporter Geraldine King, the ward councillor Kim Snape, and the agent Chris Wheatman. Craig, Geraldine, Kim, Chris, can everybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay.
Yeah, can hear you.
Thank you. Adele, will you present the report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
The application site is located within the Green Belt and relates to the Grade 2 listed building of Halsworth Manor and the adjoining agricultural field to the east. It's located on Long Lane in Heath Charnock, which is a narrow track leading from Hut Lane to the south. There are residential dwellings neighbouring the site on Old Stoneheath Court to the southeast, Red Road to the south, and Halsworth Fold Cottage and Halsworth Fold Farms to the northwest, which share a courtyard with Halsworth Manor. The land to the northeast is open agricultural land. The application seeks planning permission retrospectively for the change of use of the dwelling and agricultural land to a mixed use comprising residential and home dog boarding, sitting and an exercise training area. This is the second application submitted for the development following the withdrawal of a similar planning application earlier this year. A planning application was invited by the council following complaints from neighbours about the unauthorised use of land and also about a building located on the land which has since been removed. The business has been running since December 2019. Full details of how the site typically operates from day to day are presented within the committee report. In summary, people bring their dogs to the site for exercise or the training classes that are run from there, typically for 1 hour slots between 9 o'clock in the morning and 7:30 in the evening. Operations, as members will appreciate, are somewhat suppressed at the site at present due to the current restrictions on social gatherings. Objections have been received from 30 individuals, and Heath Charnock Parish Council have raised concerns including harm to the Greenbelt, parking issues, highway safety concerns, noise and disturbance, loss of privacy, harm to health and well-being of residents and harm to the listed building. These are detailed in the report. Representations in support have also been received from 106 individuals which identify positive aspects of the proposal, such as the business is being well run, it's COVID safe, there is a lack of similar facilities in the local area, there is good level of parking provision, the site is well screened to the perimeter, and indoor venues are not running due to COVID, and the facility improves the health and well-being of dogs and their owners. There are no objections from technical consultees to the proposal. The Council's Environmental Health Officer notes that whilst they have received a few complaints about the site, none of the complainants have chosen to pursue the nuisance procedure. However, this does not mean neighbours are not being unacceptably impacted by the proposal in planning terms. LCC County Highways have some concerns about the safe egress from the site and the parking layout, but officers believe that these issues could be overcome by the imposition of a suitable planning condition and are not identified as reasons to refuse the planning application. The proposal would involve no built development, and it is not considered to be inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, as it would preserve its openness. The proposal involves no physical changes to the listed building itself and would not have a detrimental impact upon the setting to Halsworth Manor and the contribution it makes to the significance of the building. The proposal involves at the most active sessions up to 20 dogs and their owners using the field at any one time, resulting in dog barking and owners shouting commands. Although it is noted that this level of activity is not a common occurrence, particularly during the pandemic. The activities at the site undoubtedly generate noise and disturbance to the occupiers of those dwellings that adjoin the application site. Such occupants have a right to the quiet enjoyment of the countryside that would be and is being substantially disrupted by the proposal. Consequently, it gives rise to an unacceptable impact on the amenity of the occupiers of these adjoining properties. Whilst hours of operations could be controlled by planning conditions, it's not considered that other measures, such as restricting the number of dogs using the field or providing a buffer zone between the boundary with neighbouring residential properties and the active part of the field, would meet the tests of planning conditions set out within the National Planning Practice Guidance. As such, conditions would be unenforceable. The applicant's agent disagrees with this assertion, and his response is provided in full at Appendix A to the committee report addendum. It's considered that the proposal would give rise to unacceptable adverse impacts on the level of amenity that's currently enjoyed by the occupiers, or should say previously enjoyed by the occupiers of adjoining properties, which cannot be adequately mitigated by the imposition of conditions. The proposal therefore conflicts with policy BNE1 of the Chorley Local Plan, and it is recommended that the application is refused. I would draw members' attention to the addendum, which sets out some additional representations both in favour and in support of the application, and particularly there has been a request that the application be delayed until committee members have had the opportunity to visit the site and a noise assessment undertaken by the applicant in an attempt to overcome the recommended reason for refusal. Clearly, it is up to members whether they feel a deferment of the application is appropriate. Again, the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Craig. Craig.
Good evening. Yep,
good evening. Would you like to speak now, please?
Yep, I'm Craig Winter of number 12 Old Stoneheath Court, speaking on behalf of all 50 residents here, and Tracy Malinga, whose property Holsworth Fold Farm is directly adjacent to the applicant's site. I can confirm that we are all dog and pet friendly, and our objections are certainly not out of dislike for dogs. Whilst we appreciate what the applicant is trying to do in relation to the improvement of her own and her visitors' mental health, this development is having an adverse effect on our lives and the immediate neighbours. This retrospective planning application is a replica of the previous submitted application, minus the building, and yet the applicant has still not engaged with us or taken any of our previous comments or concerns on board. There's covenants in place to ensure that the property is not used for business purposes, specifically for dogs. They were put in place by Jules Hampton, Tracy's mum, who sadly passed away late last year. Within 6 weeks of her passing, this illegal venture was set up. Tracy has commenced legal action, but as of yet, the applicant has chose to ignore all correspondence to date. For the avoidance of doubt, we strongly object on the following grounds: loss of privacy and amenity, safeguarding, noise disturbance and nuisance, and highway safety. I personally am directly affected as our property backs onto the field of constant activity. Users have a direct sight line to our bedrooms, bathrooms and garden, which is a total invasion of our privacy, which is somewhat unnerving and causing anxiety to me and my partner. This is a similar situation with all properties backing onto the field. The dimensions of the garden wall shown in the documentation provided are factually inaccurate. Tracy Malinga's garden and house are overlooked as only a 1.1 metre high stock fence separates them. People park and congregate on arrival within her courtyard with their excitable dogs barking. Our homes have been pictured on Mucky Pups Manor Facebook page, and many people have been caught peering into our gardens. This brings me on to safeguarding. We have a 6-year-old boy next door, as well as an 11-year-old girl, who have been approached by users of the field. This has led to questions like, who is that man? Why is he in the backfield? Why is he talking to me? How would you feel if this was brought to your door? It is totally unacceptable for such a business to operate 7 days a week, especially up to 7:30 in an evening, including bank holidays. The noise and nuisance is unacceptable, including shouting commands, whistling, and the use of megaphones on occasion. A petition, Save Mucky Pups Manor, has currently got over 820 signatures showing the huge scalability of this venture. We don't think that the users nor the applicant have given any consideration or thought for our mental well-being or ourselves. I believe Highways have also objected. I see there is a response from the applicant which doesn't appear to take on board the comments made. On a final note, what is an hour of fun for the dogs and their owners, friends and family is an all day, every day of constant noise and disturbance for us locals. It is in the wrong location, and we trust you will take our comments on board, your planning officer's recommendations, and refuse this application.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Geraldine.
Hello.
Hello, would you like to speak now, please?
Good evening, councillors. I am here as a spokesperson for the many users of Mucky Pups Manor. We support this application wholeheartedly because we are all responsible dog owners. Many of the users have great sadness at the thought of losing this facility, so have written letters of support referencing their physical and mental health problems, how walking in public areas is not possible for them, and how safe they feel at Mucky Pups. These letters of support are far in excess of the objectors, almost 3 to 1 in favour. There is, as mentioned, an online petition in support of Mucky Pups, which currently has over 800 signatures. The planning report is wide-ranging and comprehensive, but we do not believe it has fully considered the benefits of Mucky Pups Manor. It seems to weigh heavily in favour of the objectors, solely on the grounds of their enjoyment of Sue's land and surroundings. In respect of the objection about the noise and disturbance, the objectors from Old Stoneheath Court were offered a noise assessment by Environmental Health, but declined the offer. Why? If their main objection was noise and disturbance, that would categorically prove their case. Or does it prove that the noise is acceptable and their objections are spurious? Sue has always engaged with the planning officers and made changes to do whatever necessary to make this application acceptable. She leaves the area closest to the wall fallow and restricted hours by closing on Mondays, and requests every customer to respect her neighbour's privacy. We also feel we need to bring to your attention that the planning procedure has not been clear, transparent and open to inspection. Sue has constantly asked that all correspondence be visible on the planning side so that she can respond to any problems. But even up to today, many of the submissions are still not viewable. The majority of them were not uploaded onto the system until the 30th of September, which was 2 days after the planning report had been written, and only then after Sue had chased it up. They should have been uploaded in full, but many are still redacted. It is unfair for the applicant to expect her to respond to the objections when she has not had sight of them all. An audience was held with Sir Lindsay Hoyle recently, in which supporters put the lack of transparency to him. He was in support that there should be sufficient time given to Sue to have sight of and respond to all submissions, and that the council should have carried out a noise assessment to back up such recommendations. And he doesn't agree that the conditions referred to in the report would be unenforceable. All we
Geraldine, you've gone well over your time. No, you've been muted. Councillor Snape, would you like to comment, please?
Yeah, thank you. Madam Chairman and Planning Committee members, I've taken a great deal of time to weigh up this application. I've looked at similar sites, how they operate, and I've also visited the site to meet the applicant and had a walk around. I've also visited neighbouring residents' gardens, inviting me to understand the issues that they've been facing. The business is clearly very busy, and our dog would have certainly loved something like this. However, I do feel that it's important to look at the impact this is having on residents who live around the site. Most of these similar sites would normally not be so close to residential properties. In terms of days of operation, the site has recently been operating 9:30 till 7:30 Tuesday to Friday, with the late night openings being on a Tuesday and a Thursday evening for puppy training classes, and 9 till 6 p.m. weekends and bank holidays. I can see why residents who back onto this site have raised their concerns in this respect, as this appears to be a significant intensification of opening hours. Furthermore, the application form for the application on the council's planning website under point 19 states, please specify the hours of opening for each non-residential use proposed, or select unknown if details are not known. The form is filled in asking for permission for Monday to Friday 9 AM till 7:30, Saturday 9 AM till 6, and Sundays and bank holidays 9 AM till 6. So I can totally sympathise with the residents' worries that if this application was to be passed, they're concerned that it could end up running up to 7 days a week in a very residential area. And I feel this would be inappropriate in this location. In terms of highways, the County Council's highways have provided some conclusive concerns and comments on the application. Amongst the most significant is that they're asking for a passing place to be installed by the applicant on Hut Lane that will be on highway land, 36 metres long and carriageway width of 5.5 metres, as you'll have seen in your reports due to the narrow nature of the lane. In terms of privacy stroke noise issues, again, having visited the site and looked at it from both sides of the boundary, the gardens of Old Stoneheath Court are slightly higher than the land at Holsworth Manor, so privacy is a significant issue for people who live nearby. Whilst the applicant has done her best to ensure that she leaves the more residential side of the field with overgrown grass to deter people going up to the walls of the surrounding properties, I'm told it does still occur, and I understand the council has been provided with photos from residents to exemplify this. And as Craig has already mentioned, I understand some residents have raised worries in terms of safeguarding for the children when people can wander up to the back garden wall to talk to them. Noise has also been a concern from residents, as the planning officers advised in the report, restricting the number of dogs, which would then aid controlling noise issues, is not an enforceable condition as far as they're concerned, nor is providing a buffer. I really feel that this must be taken into account in refusing this current application. Residents have also contacted me with their concerns that the council has a responsibility to ensure that it makes decisions in a consistent manner, in particular in regard to a precedent that has already been set just further up Hut Lane, where the applicant was turned down for commercial activity on their land in order to protect the amenity of the area and the residential occupiers of dwellings in that vicinity. That commercial activity would have been far less frequent than what this application is. In conclusion, please can I remind members this is a retrospective application and has been operating for nearly a year, and I feel both for the benefit of the applicant and the people that live nearby that a decision really must be made on this tonight. The Parish Council have also raised their objections on this, and having taken a balanced view, sadly I'm asking the committee to support the officers' recommendations this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Have I got Chris Weekman, please?
Yes, Chairman.
There you are.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Members of the committee. First and foremost, I was instructed on this on Thursday last week. Until that time, I had no involvement in the submission of either application. And one of the first things I understood was that this application had not had the relevant supporting documentation with it, namely a noise assessment to start with. And I think it's fair to say that having had discussions with the applicant, that we do accept that mistakes have been made. However, I do think that there is the opportunity to provide solutions and changes that would allow a more informed decision to be made by the council. However, that would require a deferral of the application this evening. At some point or other, whether it's after a deferral this evening or if the application is refused, the applicants have been advised a noise report is an absolute must. In addition, I must disagree with Adele on the issue of the planning conditions. Sorry, Adele, the issue is widely covered in planning applications of this nature across the country. I have provided evidence from Durham, from Northumberland, from Wigan, from Wakefield. I could provide them from just about anywhere in the country, and they are enforceable. They meet the tests of being enforceable. Yes, it would require that maybe the officers and enforcement officers might have to do spot visits and spot checks, but that's the whole purpose of having conditions and having an enforcement regime. There's sometimes you do have to do those checks, but I think we can come up with a management plan. I think we can control the hours of operation, and hours of operation are somewhat controlled by daylight and sunlight anyway. You know, we've been talking about the hours of operation at 7:30 at night. That's not going to happen as of in 2 weeks' time. So yes, the hours of operation can come down. You've already heard from the supporter that the premises no longer open on a Monday. We have the ability to change what has been submitted and make this an acceptable solution. It may not be acceptable to the residents who are fundamentally against the scheme, but we can put a boundary area in, a separation area. We can put planting in to stop alleged safeguarding issues. and we can control the numbers, the hours of operation. We can make improvements in terms of the highways requirements, and we can carry out a noise assessment. And we are offering to do that. As I say, this is late in the day, I accept that. But if that's rejected by the committee, then these issues will come up at appeal, and we will say we've made these offers and it hasn't been accepted. We will still have to do a noise report for an appeal. The client accepts that. I ask you again, if you could please defer it tonight so that we can address these issues. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Just to say that the applicant could have withdrawn the application and resubmitted it after these things have been done. Adele, do you want to come back?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would make this application is actually a resubmission of the previously withdrawn application. And I hear what Mr. Weedman says in terms of whether the conditions meet the test. I think we'll just have to agree to differ there to a certain extent. I think it would be very difficult for the council to spend resources going up counting dogs in and out, being able to identify which dogs were there, who were actually taking part in the training, which dogs were just sat there just to watch their puppy classmate, etc. One of the other issues is about leaving some of the field fallow so that there's a clear distinction, and I accept that on site from when I visited there was a clear distinction between the usable part of the field, which is a more formal setup, and that fallow, but without actually erecting some kind of physical barrier, then I'm afraid dogs and people will be going closer to the houses to retrieve balls and dogs, and I don't think any condition, and this might sound a little bit flippant, is going to actually work to stop a dog barking, but that's another matter. It's not just about noise. I accept there's no noise assessment accompanying the application. The issue about the residents not taking up the opportunity for environmental health to undertake a noise survey, that's a completely separate matter, because that's a matter of whether there's actually a statutory nuisance being created. From a planning point of view, the test is a much lower threshold in terms of the impact on amenity. It's not just about noise to my mind, it's about the constant level of activity all day, every day, and at weekends in the field, and it's about the comings and goings in that courtyard every hour on the hour, all day, every day, and on a Saturday and a Sunday. So notwithstanding the fact that Mr. Wheatman and I may disagree on the validity of any restrictive conditions, I don't think those conditions would restrict the level of activity, and hence the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. I've got Councillor Franz, Councillor Morwood, Councillor Hargreaves, Councillor Beaver, who wish to speak. Councillor Chris Franz.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's quite a tricky application. It's obviously a very popular business, but I've thought very carefully reading about it before I came to a decision, and it put me in mind of a doggy daycare, sort of dog sitting business that we used recently in Northumberland. And when we went to go and use that as a family dropping the dog off, I noticed that the actual business premises was completely and utterly in the middle of nowhere. It must have had probably, I mean, some of the figures that we got on the back of under Appendix A for weeks 1, got a few circle ones, even in weeks 4 or over 20, 25, even into the 30s, without anything highlighted in the notes to sort of mitigate that. So obviously the dog sitting element of the business is quite substantial, and there are a number of dogs staying there for prolonged periods of time. So it does seem like a very successful business. Now, if it was, I mean, the one in Northumberland was on what seemed to be a subsidiary business to a farm. So if that was a similar application here tonight, I don't think I would have any issues with it. But what we're seeing here is a residential conversion with neighbouring properties. That's quite a substantial difference. And in reality, I actually think to the actual recommendation for refusal, I'm surprised it's that weak, because it's not quite. There's so many other issues here, including there's the issue mentioned about having to ensure that the conditions are met if we approved it. Well, this is a retrospective application where there was a wooden structure on site that was constructed without planning permission. So the suggestion is that putting that onus on us it isn't really reasonable, particularly when the applicant has had to come back to us retrospectively. Unfortunately, I think the case for refusal here is very strong, and I'm happy to move it.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Morwood.
Thank you, Chair. I'll follow on from Councillor France. A reminder, yes, it's retrospective, and you know how we love retrospective. It's been going for a year. They've withdrawn it once. They've listened to all the concerns, no doubt, for most of that year, and yet they come back at the last minute and say we would have been happy to make the changes to alleviate the problem. Then perhaps they should have withdrawn, said they would stop all the business while they corrected everything, and then come back to us, and they may have stood a better chance. It's a good idea. We've no objection to dogs getting exercised. There's plenty of places where they can exercise. We have a very nice park in the middle of Chorley. It's a good idea in the wrong location, too much residential around it. And I suspect maybe the reason why the residents declined the noise assessment is it's not that moment in time whether the barking is too loud or not. It's the fact that it goes on from 9:30 till 7:30. It's not the level, it's the constant level throughout the day for 6 days a week, as it would appear. There is, or even 7, thank you. There is no way I can possibly agree to this carrying on, and I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Hargreaves.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, it is a very strong business at the moment. I do recall, I think, Mr. Weekman saying there was some sort of barrier to be placed. That was a thought. However, I do have a concern about a noise assessment, and I can't believe when I read the documents and the LCC had none of the neighbours or the objectors who had complained had actually taken it that step further to a noise assessment, and LCC make that clear in the documentation. And I find that very strange, and I'm wondering why did they not take it any further, considering they object so strongly, because that would have given them a bit more ammunition. I'm hoping that perhaps Mr. Weekman can tell us or fill us in. But from my point of view, I think perhaps if we look, I know he can't. If we look at the fact that they want to change things, albeit it's retrospective, they want to change things, want to adapt the hours, and certainly some of the activities, then perhaps we should look at it.
Councillor Beaver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We heard that the hours of operations are going to decrease in 2 weeks' time, but presumably that's for winter, and then they're going to kick in next year. So that's no benefit. And it amazes me, if I was running this business, the first thing I would have done is I'd have done my own noise assessment and then said, there's my evidence. Do you want one? I don't believe that the benefits of the users for 1 hour outweighs the harm that it's going to have in the community all day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beaver. Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Chair. I support the refusal. I'm not impressed by the agent's comments, who seems to think that he supports the thrust of it, but then spends his time speaking, demolishing Adele's argument, showing up some case laws that he's famous for. He doesn't seem to accept the officer's report, and he spends 4 pages criticising it. I'm not impressed. I support the recommendation for refusal, and if it comes to accepting the professional planning officer of Chorley's recommendation, I would prefer to do that, and I accept that.
Thank you, Councillor Whitaker. I've got Councillor Gordon-France and Councillor Hilton.
I just unmuted myself. Sorry, Chair. Just a quick one from Adele, really. I just wondered how much of this operation has actually gone outside since the COVID pandemic, really, and how much was operated inside. Or I don't know whether you know that, Adele, or not. I just wondered.
Yeah, through you, Chair, the actual the dog training and the classes is wholly outside in the field. So the activity that takes place indoors is the home dog boarding and sitting. That doesn't necessarily present a problem to me, and a lot of people do that without the need to apply for planning permission depending on the scale. But all the activity associated with dog training and dog exercising is in the field. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Hilton.
Yeah, I'll just be brief, Chair. I love dogs, one of my favourite things, and I think this is a wonderful business. It just is unfortunately in the wrong place, and we can't put conditions on dogs barking. They simply wouldn't understand them. So I support the officers. Thanks.
Okay, everybody spoken who wishes to? I think. Let me just check. Councillor Beevy, you've still got your hand up. Have you just forgotten to take it down?
Forgotten, madam. Thank you.
Okay. So we're at the end of the debate. I've got a proposer and a seconder for refusal. Nobody's offered me any alternatives. So I'm assuming that everybody is in favour of the officer recommendation. If not, could you please indicate? No, nothing. Okay. So, Alex.
Thank you, Chair. Members have decided to refuse the application at Holdsworth Manor for the reasons in paragraph 1 of the officer report. Okay,
thank you. Moving on to item 3E. We're going to horses now. Eccleston Equestrian Centre, Alton Lane, pages 125 to 150 with an update on your addendum. And the recommendation is outline planning permission is granted subject to conditions. I've got a registered speaker, the agent, Chris Wheatman. Can you hear, Chris? I'm assuming you can, because you could before.
Yes, I can. Yes, yeah, thank you.
Ian, could you present the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application seeks outline planning permission for the erection of 5 detached dwellings, including details of access, layout and scale following the partial demolition of buildings at Eccleston Equestrian Centre in Oldswalton. The application site is located in the Greenbelt and comprises a number of buildings that form an established commercial equestrian centre. The site is previously developed land in line with the definitions set out in the National Planning Policy Framework. The framework and local plan allow for the redevelopment of such sites on the proviso that the development does not have a greater impact on openness than the existing development. Given the current impact of the existing buildings on the site to be removed, the proposed dwellings would not be materially larger and would not have a greater impact on openness. There would be no impact on neighbour amenity as a result of the proposed development, and the development would have no adverse impact on the character of the area. In addition, there would be no unacceptable highway or ecology impacts, and all issues are covered in detail within the committee report. The proposed development is considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan and is recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out on the addendum. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thanks, Ian. Chris, would you like to speak now, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was hoping I wouldn't have to speak in regard to this particular application. But obviously within the report there are a couple of objections, and I would just like to take the opportunity to clarify those objections. The objection from Councillor Sloan as ward councillor and the parish council make a number of incorrect comments in terms of the interpretation of national and local planning policy. With regard to the application is submitted to be considered under BNE 5 of the local plan and paragraph 145G of the National Planning Policy Framework. It's not submitted as infilling in a village, as the parish council allude to, and it's not submitted as for social housing, because there are different sections within the National Planning Policy Framework. In addition, there is no requirement for the use of the new buildings to be in the same use as the existing buildings. I'm sorry to quote case law again, but the High Court in London Borough of Bromley v. the Secretary of State in 2015 stated that that was not a material planning consideration. Again, with regard to the application, nobody is trying to circumvent Greenbelt policy as is alleged. The application was designed to accord with national and local Greenbelt policies. The terms of the scale of the development is identical to the schemes that this same planning committee, albeit with some different members, but the same planning committee, Chorley Planning Committee, approved in both Charnock-Rich and Heskin, opposite the Laurels Golf Club and at the former Latvian Embassy. And as the officer's report clearly states, it is appropriate development in the Greenbelt. It is not an employment site, again, as paragraph 20 of the officer's report clearly states, and therefore there is no loss of employment use. I would ask members to approve this application, and if any member thinks that in this occasion I'm incorrect, I would ask Adele or Ian to clarify that point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, over to you, members. Oh, somebody. Who is it? Councillor Marwood. Councillor Whitaker. Councillor Marwood.
On this occasion, I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation to approve. Yes, I do remember approving the Latvian Embassy, which I found very strange at the time, but I accept the report as written, and I support this. Okay.
Councillor Whitaker.
I'm very grateful for Mr. Wheatman pointing out policy BNE 5145 brackets G. I'm not sure anybody else on the committee would be familiar with that, but I'm sure Mr. Wheatman is, and he's quoted the case laws often, as we both know. The thing that concerns me, I'm not going to vote against this application. I think it's regrettable that a very successful business like the Equestrian Centre is having to shut up and close its books, etc. And think 5 large detached houses on Youngs Walton Lane will have an adverse effect on the nature of the village. The parish council have objected to, the local ward councillor has objected. I'm not going to vote against it, Chairman. I'm going to abstain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, it is unfortunate that it's closing. When I was reading this, I was just tying myself in knots, whether it was greenbelt, landfill, infill, anything else. And in the end, I just came down to the fact that it is in the greenbelt and it's redeveloping brownbelt land. So I don't see how we can oppose that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Boardman. I forgot to unmute.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think once again we've seen a few of these applications in the past few years. I think as a committee we've been minded to approve these on the basis that we look very closely at the volume that's being replaced. I think in this instance there's some pretty accurate figures in there, which means that not all of the Equestrian Centre is being removed. I think there's about 20% of the actual large building being removed, which does mean that the remainder 80% can still be used as an equestrian centre. So it would be seen as a sustainable development for the site. I think is that's what's concluded in the last paragraph of the planning officer's report. So on these grounds, I'd happily second Councillor Morwood's approval to support the officer's recommendation. Muted, Chair.
Again, oh, I keep forgetting. I'm that busy looking to see if anybody wants to speak. I forget to unmute myself. Any other comments from anybody? If not, I'll go to the vote. No. If you wish to vote against or abstain, could you indicate? I know Councillor Whitaker said he will be abstaining. Anybody else? Councillor Hilton?
I'd like to abstain, Chair. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Abstain.
That's right. So that's Councillor Hilton and Councillor Dalton. Everybody else happy?
And me, Chairman. You got me.
Yeah, I've got you down, Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, Alex.
Thank you, Chair. Members have decided to approve the application subject to the conditions in the addendum.
Thank you. Item, so we're getting there. 3F, land adjacent to 715 Preston Road, Claytonley Woods, pages 151 to 178, with an update on your addendum. The recommendation that planning permission is granted subject to conditions is the same. I've got two registered speakers, the objector Tim Vincent Barwood and the agent Rachel Leather. Tim, Rachel, can you hear?
Yes, I can hear
Speak.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's okay then. Adele's going to present this report. Adele.
Thank you, Chair. This application site comprises a plot of land that's located to the side of and is associated with number 715 Preston Road in Clayton-le Woods on the edge of the Greenbelt. There are several vacant horticultural buildings on the land and a bridleway is located along part of the access road. Outline planning permission was granted in 2018 for the erection of 2 dwellings on this site, and this current application was originally submitted seeking full planning permission for the demolition of the existing horticultural buildings and for the erection of 7 dwellings. However, this was later amended at the request of the case officer and reduced to 6 dwellings to avoid any of the buildings that were proposed being located within the Greenbelt itself. The site boundary has also been revised since the committee report was published to provide reassurance that none of the garden areas would also be located within the Greenbelt. Objections have been received from 7 individuals relating to issues including highway safety, parking concerns, drainage and impacts upon the setting of the Grade 2 listed building of Hawksclough Farmhouse. There are no outstanding objections from any of the technical consultees. The Council's ecological advisors have recommended conditions and informatives be attached to any grant of planning permission in order to protect Clayton Brook and the Curdon Valley Park, as well as the River Lostock Biological Heritage Site, which is located to the north. LCC Highways have requested changes which have been made to the site layout, including measures to protect the bridleway, increasing the width of the access road, inclusion of footpaths and improved parking. The site is located within the Clayton Brook, Clayton Green settlement area as identified in Policy V2 of the Chorley Local Plan, and members will be aware that development proposals within settlement areas may be appropriate for uses such as housing, offices, community facilities or green infrastructure, and must be judged by their compatibility with existing surrounding development and their ability to satisfy other material planning considerations. The application also falls to be considered against the provisions of Policy HS3 of the Chorley Local Plan, which relates to development within private residential gardens that are not allocated for housing specifically. The proposal is considered to be in a sustainable location and so is considered to meet with the objectives of Criteria 1 of this policy, which seeks to promote sustainable forms of development. The site is located in excess of 180 metres from the Grade 2 listed building, and there is substantial intervening vegetation between the two and an existing housing estate. Consequently, therefore, there would be no resultant harm on this heritage asset or its setting. In summary, there would be no unacceptable detrimental impacts on the character and appearance of the area or the amenity of neighbouring occupiers as a result of the proposed development, and the development is located in a sustainable location and would not have an adverse unacceptable impact on highway safety, ecology matters or heritage assets. On this basis, it is recommended that the application is approved, and I just draw your attention to the suggested conditions that are set out in the addendum. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Tim, would you like to speak now?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'm the owner of Hawksclough Farmhouse, as just been mentioned. My principal objection is due to the negative effect that the development will have on the setting of the Grade 2 listed building, Hawksclough Farmhouse. The proposed scheme's frontage is directly onto the private lane leading to Hawksclough and is almost entirely within the curtilage of the farmhouse and therefore the listing. The boundary of the farm estate is marked by the old stone gateposts at the top of the lane. The developer has already removed one of these gateposts without my authority, for which he should have obtained listed building consent. One gatepost remains marking the extent of the curtilage, and the aforementioned could be seen on the developer's site plan. The development will destroy the historic character of the approach to Hawksclough and change it from what is currently an ancient wooded farm track to something more akin to a modern housing estate, totally destroying any historic qualities and character from this part of the listed property. It would appear from the report provided for this meeting that the officers have failed to give this due consideration and have not recognised the gateway as an intrinsic part of the listed property. The lack of visibility between the farmhouse and the gateway is therefore immaterial. If the application is carried for approval, I'd probably consider making a complaint of maladministration to the Ombudsman over this issue. Also related to this point is that the office appears to fail to take into account the effect on the entrance to Curedon Park, public amenity, and the detriment to the public. Many people use the footpath entrance to the park along the drive, and the gateway, the drive, the house, and the stables and barn are a complete whole and significant visual feature for Curedon Park. I also need to make committee aware, although I realise it's not a planning matter, that the developer is riding roughshod over my interest as a landowner. I own the private lane right up to Preston Road, over which the development requires access. This is a public driveway and footpath, but there is no right of way for motorised vehicles. The developer has not consulted with me in any way, and the first thing I knew about his plans was when he illegally removed the stone gate post I've previously mentioned. I've also got some comments from neighbours from the cottages adjacent to number 715, which I'd like to relay. These are as follows and apply if the development were to go ahead. So, concerning access for large vehicles and construction traffic, the following should be undertaken before any building commences. So there's an existing garage that needs to be demolished. The planned roads are completed. Privacy screening in front of number 717 and 719 included in the previous application should be retained. And parking previously allocated for 717 and 719 in the initial application is now missing and should be reinstated. And failure to do this will mean that the cottage residents and visitors to Curedon Valley will park on the access road, making it impossible for traffic to safely access the site. The revised scheme does not include a bin collection point, and therefore, with extra houses, large collection vehicles will have difficulty accessing the narrow lane. This should be reinstated. And then finally, the rumble strip outside 717 should be deleted, as it was felt that by highways it wasn't necessary and will cause unnecessary noise and hazard. Thank you for letting me speak. Sorry I've gone over a bit, but there's a lot to go.
Okay, thank you. Lost my papers. Rachel,
Yes.
would you like to speak, please? No,
Thank
please.
you. Thank you, Chair and members. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the applicants, Thistle Homes, who are a local company specialising in high quality conversions and new build homes. The principle of additional residential development on this site was established by the previous application, which allowed 2 new dwellings here in 2018. As set out in the officer's report, the principle of the scheme is considered acceptable, given that the site is located within the settlement boundary of Clayton Brook, and is therefore a location where new development is directed towards, as opposed to the sites in the countryside and greenbelt. Whereas the previous approval on this site allowed for 2 large detached dwellings, the proposal now before members is for 6 smaller dwellings arranged in 2 blocks of 3, which are considered to better reflect the existing scale and character and grain of development in the immediate vicinity. In this regard, it is considered that these proposals are an improvement on the previous approved scheme. The design of the houses takes cues from the existing development on this lane, using a style and materials which are considered to fit in well in this location. The development would see the removal of a number of existing structures which were associated with the use of the site to grow produce for the previous owner's florist business. In its place will be 6 high-quality dwellings, each providing 2 bedrooms with private gardens and dedicated private parking spaces. There are a number of trees around the site which provide a high level of screening to the rear and which will be retained as part of the proposals. It is not considered that the proposals would have any adverse impact on the amenities of neighbouring properties, given that the majority of this existing dwelling, known as 715 Preston Road, is being retained, with neighbours lying to the opposite side of this house, away from the application site. During the course of the application, we have worked with the council to amend the scheme to ensure it is acceptable. This involved reducing the number of dwellings proposed from 7 to 6 and ensuring that all of the dwellings fall within the settlement boundary. LCC Highways have suggested amendments to the scheme, which the applicant has addressed. LCC are now happy with the scheme and believe that the proposals can be accessed safely and efficiently from Preston Road. The principle of the development is acceptable and there are no technical matters which would suggest the planning permission should not be granted. The proposals are in line with the development plan and furthermore would make a small yet valuable contribution to housing delivery in Chorley within the existing settlement boundary. I would urge the Planning Committee to approve this application in line with the recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Right, over to you, members. Councillor France.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a question in regards to the proposed conditions made by Councillor Collins. There are a few that I'd like to pick out, just 1, 4, 5 and 6. Number 1, that the existing garage structure be demolished. Would it be possible to actually condition that the demolition of the current buildings on site be undertaken prior to any other construction work? Then just in regard, I would mind some comments in regards to 4 and 5, and with 6, I mean, I've got some, experience with residents in my ward complaining about rumble strips that have been installed by LCC. I must say, from my own experience, they do make quite a bit of noise. I would like some comments in regards to potentially removing them. Thank you.
Okay, Adele. You're muted.
Sorry. Okay. I think the suggested conditions, I think this has been picked up on the addendum in terms of the fact that there's already conditions that relate to the highway matters. And the point that is set out in the addendum is that the road couldn't be constructed to the required condition, the required standard, without the garage being demolished in any event. So a separate condition requiring that to take place would seem unnecessary.
Okay.
Thank you for that. And in regards to the parking, the bin collection point, and the rumble strip specifically.
Councillor France, are you suggesting that the rumble strips be deleted from the requirement?
So I'm quite satisfied with that as a proposal. I mean, I've got experience of them causing a problem with some of my residents if they've been particularly close. But to be fair, there needs to be quite a bit of speed in order for them to achieve that, I must admit. So I'd be interested to see what other members make of it. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Boardman, Councillor Hargreaves, Councillor Whitaker. Councillor Boardman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to support this proposal. I was a little bit concerned at first about the physical size of the dwellings, but then when you put them in relation to dwellings 715, 717, 719, they are pretty much in proportion. It is nice to see that there's an affordable type houses going on within this area. Not all affordables can be in the town centre, so it's quite nice to see some out in the semi-rural areas around Chorley. So it gets my full support, and I approve the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Hargreaves.
I would like the rumble strips removed. I don't think they're necessary. And whereas originally the plan was for 2 dwellings, it's now was 7, now it's 6. So there's a lot more use in and out of that small area. So I don't think you need rumble strips, to be fair. So I would like to see them removed. I am concerned that the gate post was removed by the developers, and I would have thought they would have asked first. And obviously some of this stuff, because of the old farmhouse, is very old, and you go down the lane, it's a bit of a mucky lane when you go down to the bottom of it. But I would have thought that there was a lot of historical features there that need to be retained, and I just wondered if the officers had picked those up. If I could ask Adele.
Yeah, through you, Chair, certainly. I think there's a couple of separate private legal matters that are intertwined with this as well, but certainly we will pick that removal up outside of this planning process. I would also like to respond to the comment about the claim of potential alleged maladministration and the failure to take into account the provisions of the framework in respect of the impact on heritage assessment. It is a very short summary, I accept that, but we have considered the impact upon what is effectively a designated heritage, and we have come to the a heritage asset, and we have come to the conclusion that there would not be an adverse impact. Clearly, members will be mindful that the recourse through the planning process of a decision that has failed to take into account planning considerations is through a formal judicial review rather than through a complaint to the Ombudsman. But I would just make that point. But certainly, Councillor Hargreaves, with regards to the removal of the pillar, I think it's important that we will pick that up outside of this application process.
Thank you, Adele. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Chair. I was impressed by the objector's comments. I don't know this site at all. When listening to that, I was mindful to ask the committee to consider a site visit so we can have a look at these things. I wasn't impressed by the developer's suggestion that 2 times 3 will be better than 2 large ones. I think it's probably the motivation is so that they'll be able to sell. I'm equally not sure that they'll be lower cost or affordable. So my suggestion, whatever other members who know the site better than I, would be that we can have a look at a site visit and maybe judge for ourselves. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor France, you wanted to come back?
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to go back. To be honest, I can appreciate a few of the concerns, but I actually think this is quite a sustainable site. And to refer to the comments made by Councillor Ball, what he said was they were affordable type houses, being that they were of a type perhaps that would be more affordable for people to purchase, particularly younger families, I assume. But what I would say is that actually, if I'm honest, I don't particularly object to the housing type. I'm quite in favour of it. I think that looking at back again at the rumble strip, we've been right in front of number 715. I do think it is unnecessary, so I'm happy to second the approval, as long as Councillor Bowman will be happy to acknowledge the removal of the rumble strip, which I don't think really is unnecessary. If I lived in number 715, it would certainly frustrate me. Thank you.
Councillor Gordon, France.
I don't know the site, so I'm just quite happy to second Councillor
do that.
Alan Whitaker's site
You would
visit.
do that. Okay. I have a proposer and a seconder for a site visit. Councillor Morwood, sorry, your hand's just gone up.
Sorry, yes, just to come back on the rumble strips. I don't know if we're all experts on such a thing, but obviously highways are, and rumble strips, I presume, are there because there's an imminent danger, and it's to warn the driver of something that might be coming up. And as I understand it, most of the noise comes through into the car. So I don't know if it's in our prerogative to take away or put in rumble strips. The experts say a rumble strip is required. Who am I to disagree?
Thank you. Councillor Boardman, then Councillor Hargreaves.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was just coming back to what Councillor France said about the rumble strip. Councillor Moore was actually correct. You know, the rumble strip is there to slow the traffic down coming into the development site. You can see those houses are clearly 2-bedroom. There will be children in those houses, and they're more than likely going to be playing out when the weather's fine enough. And that's what highways actually do request on many occasions, that there is a change of surface in order to notify the driver that they are coming into a residential area. So I can't really support the removal of it. If in fact anything, I'd like to see it retained. Thank you.
Councillor Hargreaves.
I think I'd like a site visit on the basis that it's a very old farm. It's a heritage centre. It's just on the edge of Cuerden, and I think they've moved it from 2 to 7, then 6 houses. That's a lot more noise. It's a lot more aggravation for people who currently live there. I think I'd like to see a site visit to ensure that we're actually making the right decision.
Councillor France.
Yeah, just to come back and acknowledge the comments about safety concerns, and I'm still happy to second the application. Thank you.
Okay. I've got a proposer and a seconder for a site visit, and a proposer and a seconder for the officer recommendation. I'll have to go through everybody. It's the only way I can do this. Proposer for a site visit. Councillor Beaver. For and against the site visit?
Well, it would be.
Councillor Boardman.
Against, against, Chair.
Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor.
I got promoted.
Promoted.
Councillor Dalton.
Against.
Councillor France.
Or.
Councillor G.
Against the site visits.
Councillor Gray.
For.
Councillor Hargreaves.
For.
Councillor Hilton.
For.
Councillor Marwood.
Against.
Councillor Whittam.
For.
Councillor Whitaker.
For.
Where am I up to? Councillor France.
Against.
Myself, I'm not bothered.
June.
I don't mind whether we go on a site visit or not, to be fair.
Well, put your hand up when you do.
I'll go for. Go on.
Thank you. Can you just clarify which way you voted, Chair? Or did you have
for a site?
for a
I said
site
for.
visit?
Yeah, in the end. Stand very answer me. Just because I'm available, I don't mind.
It's been very close, Chair, but 7 members voted for a site visit and 6 against. So the motion is carried.
So we're
in
going on
favour
a
of the
site visit. Okay. Right. Cheeky monkeys. I'm not talking to you lot. That's the next application.
Chair, before, sorry to interrupt. Before you proceed, Councillor Whitaker here.
Yeah, I know.
May I be excused for the meeting? I have another appointment to go to, Chair.
Okay.
You'll forgive
Thanks.
me.
Yes.
Thank
Councillor France, you've still got your hand up. Cheeky monkeys, we're up to now. I've lost my page. I've not turned over, that's why. Cheeky Monkeys Factory Lane, page 179 to 210, with an update on your addendum. And the recommendation of me remains the same. Ian's going to present this item. Planning permission is granted subject to conditions and a section 106 to secure improvements to public open space. I've no registered speakers. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 6 detached houses with associated infrastructure following the demolition of existing buildings. The application site comprises a warehouse building that was most recently occupied for leisure purposes and is located within the settlement area of Whittle Woods, where there is a presumption in favour of sustainable development as set out in the framework and Chorley local plan. The proposed development will be located to the north of a recent housing development and would in effect form an extension of that estate. The buildings will be removed of a functional appearance, and the proposed development will be more in keeping with the prevailing residential character of the area. The proposed dwellings will meet the council's interface guidelines, and there'll be no unacceptable detrimental impacts on residential amenity. The site will be accessed from Ken Mill Lane, as is the existing housing, whilst adequate car parking will be provided in line with the council's parking standards. LCC Highways have assessed the scheme and raised no objection. All of the matters are acceptable subject to conditions and appropriate mitigation measures. And overall, the proposed development is considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan and is recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out on the addendum and the Section 106 agreement to secure improvements to play space. Thank you, Chair.
Over to you lot. Councillor France.
Thank you, Chair. To be honest, I think this is quite a straightforward conversion of what looks to be, brownfield site to greenfield. We're happy to move it.
Councillor Marwood.
Happy to move it, Chair.
Anybody else wish to comment? If
Second
not, I'll
round.
move to the vote. Okay, so everybody is happy with that. If not, speak now. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Members have decided to approve the application for the erection of 6 detached houses, subject to conditions and a Section 106 planning obligation.
Okay. H, the Royal Bank of Scotland, Town Road, Croston, pages 211 to 230. Adele's going to present this item, which is recommending refusal. I've one registered speaker, an objector, Tom Smith. Tom, can you hear and speak?
I can, yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Adele, can you present the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application relates to a terrace property located on Town Road in Croston. It was previously occupied by the Royal Bank of Scotland. A previous application in 2009 that sought consent to change the use of the property from a Class A4 drinking establishment, along with associated elevational alterations, including the creation of a balcony and insertion of ground floor windows, was refused on 4 grounds, including the impact on privacy of the properties directly opposite, being out of keeping with the surrounding conservation area, the impact on neighbouring residential properties as a result of noise generation, and the impact of noise and disturbance as a result of people congregating outside the enclosed building. This current application seeks planning permission for the change of use of the building for a Class A3/A4 use with a function room on the first floor. No elevational alterations are proposed. 9 letters of objection have been received, and these are detailed in the report. The Parish Council have also objected on the basis that they do not consider that the issues raised regarding the previous proposal have adequately been addressed or overcome. The Council's regulatory services have raised concerns regarding noise disturbance, cigarette smoke, and the lack of an acoustic survey accompanying the proposal. LCC Highways have requested additional information relating to storage of kegs and barrels and servicing of the property. A plan has been provided showing the location of the bins, and limited information has been provided regarding the servicing arrangements. However, it is considered that further information could be secured by condition if required. The application property is located directly adjacent to and shares a party wall with a residential property. It is proposed that the hours of operation of the premises would vary depending on the day, but ultimately would extend until 11 p.m. on a Saturday. The Class A4 use would represent a more intensive use of the site than the previous bank, including the creation of noise as a result of the conversion and laughter and general talking until closing time. Whilst the applicant has stated that the upstairs would only be used for functions, no detail of how this would be managed has been provided, and it is not considered that this could be adequately controlled through the imposition of a planning condition. Furthermore, these functions are likely to include evening and weekend gatherings. The application has been accompanied by details of potential soundproofing. However, this has not been supported by any technical information in the form of an acoustic survey that would demonstrate that this would be sufficient to overcome concerns regarding the noise impact on the directly adjacent residential property. Regardless of this, no control could be exerted over the noise generated by customers entering and leaving the premises and congregating and smoking outside late in the evening, which would undoubtedly result in noise and disturbance to local residents. There are no concerns regarding the proposal in relation to the impacts on the conservation area, and it is not considered that there would be any adverse impacts on highway safety as a result of the proposal. Overall, it is considered that the proposal would result in an adverse impact on the amenity of the directly adjacent residents and the wider area due to noise, disturbance and smoking, and that the provision of the first floor function room does not adequately address these issues or alleviate the concerns raised in the previously refused application. It is therefore recommended that the application is refused for the reasons set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Tom, would you like to speak now, please?
Thanks very much. My name's Tom Smith, and we live next door to the property with our 5 young children and object to the planning permission on a number of different grounds. Frankly, it's hard to think of a less suitable use for the subject property than a wine bar, both due to the location and the type of property it is. It's predominantly in a residential area with residential properties either side of it and across the street, and there's no parking facilities whatsoever and no outside space, save for a pretty inaccessible rear yard which measures approximately 3 metres by 4. Our major concerns and objections, which are echoed by a number of other residents, are as follows. The first is general nuisance, both in terms of noise caused by drinkers coming and going and congregating outside, and the nuisance caused by the smokers. There will be significant issues in terms of smoke, litter, noise and blockage of the pavement. There is no part of the area at the front that belongs to the property that could be used as a smoking area. Secondly, there's noise nuisance. The walls between our property and the subject property are 1 brick thin, and I do not accept that the soundproofing proposed, which is some enhanced plasterboard, will protect us and other neighbours sufficiently from the noise nuisance that would be experienced internally, particularly with regard to functions and late night events. That's quite apart from the noise nuisance that will be caused outside the subject property with patrons coming and going. Thirdly, refuse storage and removal. The premises have no proper facilities for the storage and collection of commercial waste. There's no suitable external access to the rear of the property where the waste is proposed to be stored. Fourthly, parking. There's no off-street parking, which will cause yet more parking problems in an already busy area, which will cause further traffic issues on a major through route. Fifthly, amenity. Crossing itself has 7 drinking establishments as well as other licensed premises, so it can hardly be said to be lacking in that regard. It's worth noting that all of the other pubs have their own car parks and none of them utilise an upstairs area, even for the purposes of a function suite. Query also how the use of the upstairs as a function suite could be monitored and policed. The fear would be that the upstairs would be used regularly as part of the general bar area. And finally, privacy. The upstairs of the property, which is planned to be used as a function room, has clear views into neighbouring bedroom windows, allowing patrons to potentially see into these homes and affecting the privacy of local residents. Overall, on our own behalf and on behalf of the other local residents who have objected, we object to the proposed change of use. The property is not suitable to be a wine bar, both in terms of layout and location. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Franz, Councillor Hilton, Councillor G, Councillor Boardman. Councillor Franz.
Thank you, Chair. Personally, I find this application to be very similar to a previous submission, and the only thing that really stands out is it actually might be weaker. I really suggest we don't waste any more time. The 2 recommendations for refusal are perfectly strong. Let's move for it, chuck it out of here, and get done with it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hilton.
Yeah, I completely agree with Councillor Franz. This is absolutely categorically the not place for such an not the right place rather for such an establishment. The fact that people will be smoking outside adjacent to a property with 5 young children is completely unacceptable. So I'm happy to second Councillor Franz's proposal for recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor G. Councillor G, no? Oh, okay. He's changed his mind. Councillor Boardman?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Again, totally inappropriate site for a cafe and a bar. Know the site really well. It's very much on the pavement. There is no space around the front elevation of that building at all. Used to use the Royal Bank of Scotland and it was bad enough trying to get in there, never mind and when there was only 1 or 2 customers, so never mind when there's 6 or 7 customers in there. So yeah, happy to support the officer's recommendation in this one.
Anybody else wish to speak? If not, I'm going to move to the vote. Or if anybody is against the officer recommendation, they could indicate now. No? Right. Everybody's in agreement. Alex?
Thank you, Chair. Members have decided to refuse the application for the reasons contained in the officer report.
And now, item I, Astley Hall, pages 231 to 260 with an update on your addendum. Adele's going to present this item and it's recommended that listed building consent is granted subject to conditions. I have no registered speakers. Adele?
Thank you, Chair. This application has been submitted by Chorley Council and seeks listed building consent for a number of works to Astley Hall. As members will be aware, Astley Hall is a Grade 1 listed building and has exceptional significance for aesthetic and historical values as a fine and distinctive example of a gentry house built circa 1600 and spectacularly remodelled in the 17th century. The hall and park have exceptional community value for the Chorley people as a public asset open to the public for approximately 100 years. There are a number of works and repairs proposed as set out in the committee report, but the key and most prominent works relate to the south range, which is the principal elevation of the building and includes the removal of the existing render. Replacement windows to the ground and first floors and provision of a new access ramp to the west door are also proposed. The works are necessary in order to ensure the upkeep of the building and address elements of it which are failing and are causing damage to its historic fabric. As a public building, the proposed access ramp would allow better access and be of demonstrable public benefit. Members will note that Historic England are supportive of the proposal and that there are no objections from any amenity body. Some outstanding concerns that the Society for the Protection of Ancient Buildings had raised have now been clarified, and I would draw members' attention to the details set out in the addendum. The application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions as detailed in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got Councillor G, Councillor France.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is very important for Chorley. It's important for Ashley Park that we get this building up and running, and so I have no hesitation to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor France.
Similarly, it's an absolutely fantastic application, and I think it'll do an awful lot of good for the building. More than happy to second it.
Okay. Anyone else wish to comment? If not, Councillor Morwood.
I just want to confirm that all the details, as much detail as we need, have been presented, and that we know that the work that's going to be done is in keeping with a Grade 1 listed building. Things like, repointing and so on. Do we have the detail, for instance, of what kind of pointing it would be? I know I'm asking, a bit detailed questions, but I haven't read the whole report, sadly. I've tried to find out, but, things like, will it be lime mortar as opposed to, sand and cement and things like that? Are we confident that the detail is all there and that everything was to be done in accordance to what was expected of this fantastic building, not just for Chorley, but for Lancashire and the whole of the Northwest?
Adele?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, it is a very important point. A number of these details will be secured through the imposition of a condition, because at this moment in time there is more investigative works that need to be undertaken. So all of the details will be covered by the repair methodology condition that's detailed in the report. And until we actually establish what the extent of the works required are, it's very difficult to come to an understanding of what that scheme is. SPAB have offered to be in contact as a technical advisory panel, so I think it would be good if we as a council in undertaking the works could take advantage of that technical advice.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to make any comments? If not, I know we've done that. I'll move to the vote. Anybody against the officer recommendation? Please show. No? No. Okay, Alex, everybody's happy with that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Members have voted to approve the application for listed building consents subject to the conditions in the addendum.
Okay, thank you. That's all the applications done. Agenda item 4, planning appeals and decisions received between 28th of August and the 28th of September 2020. Adele, have you any comments to make on that report?
Only to mention really the appeals against the enforcement notices. We have served a few enforcement notices recently. Some have resulted in action being taken by the perpetrator to ensure that the breach ceases. Others are resulting in some appeals. This is the most recent of those appeals, and obviously when we get a decision through, I will update committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor G.
No, the appeals. No, the report.
Report. Thank you. Everybody happy with that? Just one thing before we go, we will be having a session, possibly a briefing, to go through the response to the planning white paper before the end of the month. We'll be letting you know details of when, so that our comments can be added to that. With that, thank you very much. Good evening and have a safe journey home.
Thank you and good night.